Today on the Servant Leadership Podcast, we welcome Mark Whitacre, whose life inspired the Matt Damon film, The Informant. At 32, Mark was a divisional president and corporate VP at ADM, groomed for the top. When a global price-fixing scheme came to light, he wore a wire for the FBI, 10 hours a day, for 3 years. The fallout cost him his career and his freedom, but it also led to mentors who helped him trade pride for purpose. Today, Mark serves at Coca-Cola Consolidated, advancing servant leadership throughout Coca-Cola and beyond. Join us as we talk about pressure, integrity, redemption, and how servant leadership transforms both people and performance.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
There's not many people I think I will ever interview that Matt Damon has played them in a movie.
Well, he's my identical twin. I think you can see why they chose him, right?
It's such a fascinating story. Give listeners the background on what even happened and what The Informant was really all about, which is your life story.
Yeah, The Informant, that movie came out about 15 years ago. I do want to mention that the three FBI, I worked undercover for 3 years for the FBI, and the FBI agents were pretty disappointed in the accuracy of the movie. They did a documentary 2 months later to combat the movie. And that's on my website, markwhitacre.com, by Discovery Channel. Discovery Channel interviewed the three real FBI agents that I worked undercover with. My wife and I, the prosecutor, basically all the true individuals. And people watch the documentary, they watch the movie, and they say, wow, this is two different stories. So if your listeners watch the movie, they may want to watch it, because one's a Hollywood version, kind of based on a true story, and the other one is a documentary with all the real people involved, including the three FBI agents. But basically, almost 30 years ago, a little over 30 years, I was 32 at the time. I'm in my mid-60s now, but when I was 32, I was divisional president and corporate vice president of the 56th largest company in America for almost 8 years. We were $70 billion in revenue, a company known as ADM, Archer Daniels Midland, $70 billion in revenue, 32,000 employees, number 56 on the Fortune 500, and I was ranked number 4 executive out of 32,000 employees. We had a 75-year-old CEO, 69-year-old president, and I was 32 reporting to them and being mentored and groomed by them. And I was caught up in the world. Tremendous. I had my own jet, my own Falcon 50 for 8 years. I bought the CEO's home. He gave me a startup bonus. When I started, I bought his home. Our CEO owned 5% of ADM. He was 35 years as CEO, and he was a billionaire. He owned 5% of a $70 billion company, the largest single shareholder he was. And he lived in his home for 35 years, but being 75, he wanted to move something smaller, so he sold me his home. It was my first month in that position. And I bought a 13,000 square foot house with an 8-car garage, horse riding stables where your kids could ride an inside arena. And really, Chris, the life it was for those 8 years, having my own jet, living in a mansion with an 8-car garage with 3 golf greens on the property, inside horse arena. I mean, basically, it was Justin Bieber before Justin Bieber. I mean, it was like a rock star. And I got caught up in that. It was like an addiction. And my wife saw that. And I met my wife when we were in junior high and went to our high school proms together. So we're high school sweethearts and married 45 years now, which is a miracle in itself to survive all that. But she's the one that basically, she was a Christian then, and she saw how I was caught up in the world, buying Ferraris, BMWs, Mercedes, had that 8-car garage filled with 8 cars. And she's driving a 10-year-old Wrangler Jeep, and she's asking, and I'm saying, Ginger, let me buy you a yellow Ferrari. Last month's bonus, I bought a red one for me. Let me buy you a yellow one. She said, that'd be my worst nightmare. She said, I want to be a good steward for God. I didn't even know what any of that meant. And so I was caught up in the world. She was not. She was caught up in serving others and working with our church and nonprofits and helping people. And we were on 2 different paths. And when I told her about after a couple years there, and the company came to see me and said, look, Mark, we're going to put in Fortune magazine and announce you're the next COO and president. And at that time I was 34. I was only there 2 years. And divisional president, they were going to move me to company president. And they said they had someone 10 years older than me they were going to announce as the next CEO, because they were getting pressure because now the CEO was 77 and the president was 71, and being publicly traded, they were getting pressure on succession planning, at least to be mentoring some individuals that could eventually take their place. So they announced that in Fortune magazine. I'll tell you, Chris, when that it was announced that I'm a year or so away from being the next COO president of the 56th largest company in America, be the number 2 executive, I mean, I was hook, line, and sinker. I was in. I was all in. I mean, it was an addiction. But then he came back and said, well, we're going to share some things with you that we've not shared with you the last couple of years. And they shared about really a price fixing scheme, working with their competitors. But this is just after they announced it, gave me a big bonus, said I'm going to be the next COO and president. I mean, they had me so hooked. And I said, well, that's not legal. And they said, Mark, everybody does it. These laws on the books, politicians don't know anything about business. These laws should be on the books, these antitrust laws. And we've been doing it 12 years, they said. Everybody does it in the commodity business. We work with our competitors instead of fight with them. And they said, this is what you do. And for you to move up, this is what you have to learn, because you're going to have to take this over someday. So I wasn't going to leave that position. I mean, 34 years old, I just got my PhD in biochemistry at Cornell. 9 years earlier, now I'm president of the biggest biotech divisions of a company, of the Fortune 56 company. There's no way I could walk away from that. So I said, okay, I'll learn it, especially you're 35 years as CEO. You know a lot more than me about business. And I started learning. I shared it with my wife a few months later, and she forced me to turn myself in to the FBI. She prayed about it and forced me to turn myself into the FBI. And boy, did it change everything. The FBI gave me a choice to either be arrested or wear a wire. And I said, yeah, I'd rather wear a wire. I wore a wire 10 hours a day for 3 years in the largest price fixing scandal in history.
Wow. I mean,
and really, my wife was probably the whistleblower of the case more than me.
You were dealing with so much stress at that point when you were trying to figure out, should you be a whistleblower? Should you not? Your wife was pressuring you. The company's pressuring you. I know the movie's a Hollywood movie and not necessarily perfectly accurate, but were you just feeling immense pressure, or what emotion was going through you?
The documentary shows that so much better than the movie. I think that's what the FBI felt the movie missed, is the seriousness of the case. Like in the documentary, which is called Undercover, and it's on markwhitacre.com, the full 1 hour documentary. You have a 2-minute trailer or the full 1 hour show. You have the choice on it on markwhitacre.com on investigation discovery. The FBI are sharing on that documentary. They're saying, Mark, and I heard this a couple times a week for 3 years. They're wiring me up at 6 every morning, Monday through Friday for 3 years. And I wear a wire all day long, and then meet with them at night and turn over all the recordings and so on, and debriefings. And they were saying, Mark, if these guys catch you, they're going to kill you. And the documentary really makes that clear. It was the most pressure. Prison's a cakewalk compared to that. It was the most pressure I've ever been through in my life, being an informant where 30 people went to prison, and 4 just from ADM alone. But then all the other companies too, almost 30 went to prison. Wow.
How did you first hear that there was even a Hollywood production going to come out about this?
First heard about it. We walked all the premiere, and there's pictures on the website with us with Matt Damon and Steven Soderbergh and all the actors. So when they were writing the script, they contacted. They wanted a business card. They asked for a tie. They wore an actual watch, Matt Damon did. So that watch he had on was really mine that I had during those days. The business card was a true business card where it said divisional president and corporate vice president of ADM. One of the ties he wore was actually one of my ties. So it was some of the things that they really wanted during the movie. And that was several years before the movie, probably 8 or 9 years. That script was written in 2000 and the movie came out in 2009.
Wow. So that was just a crazy experience. And then you ended up being convicted at some point and serving time, which I'm sure was never on your radar or plan.
No, how that happened, Chris, is this. They gave me full immunity for wearing a wire, full immunity, never to be charged. they were so appreciative of me wearing a wire 10 hours a day. And they're telling me, say, Mark, you're risking your life. And like I said, the documentary, I think, probably shares that accuracy better than the Hollywood version. The movie is kind of a dark comedy, kind of fun, and you know, almost like an Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12 kind of tone. In real life, it was a serious story. I mean, I attempted suicide. I mean, it was the most pressure, and they show all that in the documentary, the pressure that I was under. But basically, I had full immunity. And then when the FBI came up, when they were about ready to do the raid, they said, Mark, we're going to do a raid on FBI, on ADM. We're going to send 70 agents because we need to get the paperwork that kind of show what you have on tape for 3 years. We have enough evidence now. Now we're going to get accounting records to show the prices increased and what date they increased, and get a few more witnesses. So we're going to do a raid on ADM, and we're going to raid your office too, Mark. They said, that way it makes me look not like I'm the informant. Makes me look like one of the defendants, and to protect me. But then they said, Mark, you have full immunity. You're never going to be charged. But if there's anything when the company's going to learn fairly soon that you're the one working with us, and they're going to come, this is the 56th largest company in America on the Fortune 500. They're going to spend millions on lawyers, and they're going to come after you with everything they have. And we're telling you right now, if you tell us something that the company's going to use against you, and if you tell us, we'll still give you full immunity. But you got to tell us now. Because then when the company comes and tells us that, we can say, yeah, but he wore a wire for 3 years for us to get where he was not charged. So we can always use that in turn for your illegal activity, you wore a wire for 3 years. And I said, no, there's nothing to tell. And then the next day they contacted me again, said, Mark, full immunity. We're about ready to do the raid. Full immunity if you tell us now. If there's anything the company's going to attack you with that we don't know. And I said, no, there's really nothing to tell you. The day that ADM learned I was the informant, which was the day of the raid, they learned pretty quickly, because they're really connected. The CEO was best friends with President Clinton. He was on the phone a couple times a month with President Clinton. He flew to President Nixon's funeral on this is a billionaire. This would have been like an Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, Jeffrey Bezos back in the 90s, late 80s and the 90s. Because I was wearing a wire by 92 and I joined ADM by 1989. So this would be one of the most powerful CEOs in the country at that time. And so he learned quickly that I was informant. He then told the FBI, said, well, he's no white knight informant. He stole 9 million. So they were promoting me the whole time when I was with them. Corporate vice president, publishing in Fortune magazine that I'm going to be the next COO. But now they're coming after me with everything they have. And they told the FBI that they said, well, he wrote $9 million of checks to himself, didn't pay tax on it. The top 5 salary employees have to file at a publicly traded company with SEC. Mark didn't report this $9 million. So he's doing fraud at the same time he's working for you guys, the FBI. So the FBI come to my house and said, Mark, we gave you full immunity. Now they're saying $9 million. We said anything that they came at you with, if you tell us now, you still have immunity on that. Did you take $9 million? Did you steal $9 million, Mark? And I said, well, not really. I went to my office in my home and brought these stock options. I said, look, they owe me $9 million if I could exercise these stock options today. And they said, Mark, this is a 5-year set of stock options with 10 more months to go. I said, I know, but I couldn't wait 10 months because I knew I was going to get fired. They fired me today already. They fired me that day that I'm actually having that conversation with the FBI. Once they knew I was informant, my career was over there. So I said, who's going to hire someone that wore a wire for 3 years? I'm only 38 years old now after wearing a wire for 3 years. And I said, who's going to hire somebody? So I said, this is my security. And they really owe it to me because I have it signed by the CEO and the general counsel, $9 million worth of stock options if I could cash it today. They said, Mark, you can't cash it 10 months early on your own. There's SEC violations here that regarding how you process these stock options. And I said, well, I think I could go to a court and I think a jury would listen to this about how they owed me this. And I risked my life And I'm not getting most of my income. 90% of my income is in stock options, and I don't get the stock options because I'm 10 months away on a 5-year exercise date. I said, I think a jury would be sensitive to that. And I said, well, Mark, they may be, but we got to go to the U.S. attorney, the prosecutor. We got to explain this, and you're going to lose your immunity. So they came back with a 6-month deal. Said, Mark, you've lost your immunity, but the prosecutors were sympathetic. They knew you risked your life on a crime that was $1 billion a year crime for 12 years in a row. And they see where your thinking was, but you still broke the law. It's still a fraud and money laundering how you process those stock options. So they're going to have to charge you for that, but they're going to give you a Martha Stewart sentence, 6 months in federal prison, in turn for all you did for us wearing a wire. And we're in front of my lawyer who brought this deal to us after the FBI gave it to him. I had 48 hours to sign this plea agreement. I looked at my lawyer and said, I don't know if I can do. I just wore a wire 3 years. I don't know if I can go to prison 6 months. They said, Mark, you're going to a white collar camp, no razor wire. You go in at 38, you come out at 38. Deal of a lifetime for not sharing how you process these stock options, which was fraud, how you processed it. And he said, a deal of a lifetime. My wife looked at me. She said, Mark, I'm begging you to sign it. I looked at Ginger and said, Ginger, I've had to wear a wire 3 years because of you. It's all your fault that I've had to wear a wire for 3 years. Now I got to go to prison, Ginger, 6 months because of you. I'm going to do the opposite you want me to do. I ripped up the plea agreement, fired the lawyer on the spot, hired a whole group of lawyers the next day, and went to court for 3 years in the court system. 3 years. Now I'm 38 and just a few months from 41. I'm on the tail end of 40. And I got an 8.5-year sentence instead. And I would have had a 6-month plea agreement. So I went from immunity to 6 months, a deal of a lifetime, to 8.5 years. And I was so depressed, Chris, pulled my car in the garage and tried to kill myself instead of go to prison. Hospitalized for a month, treated for clinical depression, treated for post-traumatic stress disorder. Some of the things would happen when you wear a wire for 3 years. But I had 8.5 years. So going in at 40 and coming out at 48 instead of going in at 38 and getting out at 38. So I just cut their legs off every step of the way when they were trying to help me, the FBI agents.
Well, in those next 8+ years were extremely difficult, I know, but at the same time, some of the most life-changing years of your life. And it set you up for almost what looks like a totally different life after the sentence. Talk through what your journey was like during those next years before you got out.
I will, Chris. I'll tell you, I share with a lot of young people, and I think your listeners would be interested in this. Show me your mentor, I'll show your future. So I had mentors, 2 of them, CEO and COO, were showing me how to do price fixing. We all went to prison. Show me your mentor, I show your future. Now I had a guy from Ian Howells from CBMC Christian Businessmen Connection reach out to me shortly before prison. And then Chuck Colson of the Watergate scandal. He was President Nixon's White House counsel in the 70s, went to prison for Watergate. President Nixon was actually going to prison, and President Ford pardoned him. But the other 12 individuals working for President Nixon, the director of the FBI, the attorney general, Chuck Colson, the White House counsel, all 12 of those went to prison. They did not get pardoned. Chuck Colson became a Christian in prison in the 1970s. And then he got out and started Prison Fellowship, largest prison ministry to reach out to inmates and disciple them, largest prison ministry in the country. And Chuck Colson, 20 years later, that started in 1978. In 1998, he's sitting in prison, come to visit me in my prison, read about me in the Washington Post. And show me your mentor, I show your future. He poured into me. And I remember the first thing I told him, I said, well, look, my parents are Christians. My wife's a Christian, but I'm a PhD scientist in an Ivy League school in biochemistry. And all I heard in 8 years of college, there is no God. It's evolution and Big Bang Theory and Darwinism. And he went to Brown, another Ivy League, and he was told there was no God. So he started showing me article after article. Even Albert Einstein was the first article he showed me, where Albert Einstein said only God could create the universe and only God could create man. And then he gave me a book by Sir Isaac Newton that wrote as much about God and Jesus as he did about science. I said, they never told me any of these things at Cornell in the Ivy League. And then he shared a book by articles by Francis Collins, who discovered the human genome, a Christian. And it was book after book, article after article. One of the books was an atheist, a guy named Don Byerle, Bierle, in Minnesota, a PhD biologist, that wanted to prove once and for all that God does not exist using science. He studied it exhaustively, and he wrote a book titled Surprised by Faith. God exists and Jesus is the Son of God. An atheist who became a Christian. I finished that book the third month as Chuck Colson's disciple, me, after many articles and many books, and I became a Christian then my third month in prison, and it changed my life forever. I went from bonuses, stock options, and base salary, $3 million a year for 8 years, now $20 a month for 8 years, 13,000 square feet for 8 years, now a 10 by 10 concrete floor, a locker, and a roommate for 8 years. And I became a free man in prison, and it changed my life forever. I started helping inmates get their GEDs. I helped some of them get 2-year college degrees through correspondence. I helped Spanish guys speak better English and write better English. They became the most productive years of my life at $20 a month. And for the first time in my life, I experienced what servant leadership was, but it took me to going to prison to experience that, to get all the world trappings out of the way for me to experience that. It changed my life forever. And I've been out for almost 20 years now, and I've still been on the servant leadership and this faith at work path for 20 years since I've been out.
Wow. That's so powerful. And obviously we met well after you had been out, and you were working with Coca-Cola Bottling Company.
Yes.
And I would love to hear how that even happened, because I think it's almost unbelievable. You might have got out thinking you have no career in business again, and now you're working with one of the greatest companies out there.
Yeah, just a path how I got to Coke. I've been out almost 20 years, and I learned to serve in prison, to be a servant leader, and those were productive years. I don't consider those wasted years. My wife today, and she's been interviewed several times too, say, thank God my husband didn't sign that 6-month sentence. She said, I couldn't have been more mad at that time. But she said, I don't think my husband would have listened to Ian Howes of CBMC or Chuck Colson of Prison Fellowship with a 6-month sentence. He had to be broken. He had to be the end of himself. And I thank God that he didn't sign that 6-month sentence. God gave him exactly what he needed. So I did use those years to get to know God. I wouldn't have listened to Chuck Colson with a 6-month sentence. I would have said, I'm out of here in 6 months. And, I come in at 38 and I'm out at 38. And like Ginger said, I would have come out the same greedy man that I went in. But I learned heating and air conditioning, HVAC, and I learned it well in prison during that 8-year track. And because you learn a trade if you want to. And I learned it well. I thought I can make a living for my family. I'm not going to probably get a job with an Ivy League PhD in biochemistry after this large of a case. But I learned HVAC. But some of the other companies, just like Chuck Colson read about me, it was a high-profile case. They read about me. And 4 biotech companies started visiting me in prison and had me review their patents and their strategic plans. And I started assisting them with their patents and so on, the background that I had. And those 4 companies offered me a job the day I got out. And I started with a company called Cypress Biotech with a Christian, Cypress Systems, a Christian CEO, a faith-based company. And I started off like right out of the level of college. And with 4 promotions, I became the COO and president of that company for almost 10 years. And I'm on their advisory board still today. And then I joined CBMC, one of the very Christian businessmen connection that reached out to me, and I became the COO there for several years. And now I've been at Coca-Cola Consolidated for heading on 7 years as Vice President of Culture and Care and the Executive Director of T-Factor. Now, let me mention, Chris, Coca-Cola Consolidated is the bottling side, as you mentioned. It's not Coca-Cola Company in Atlanta. We're a different CEO, different ownership, different board. We're headquartered in Charlotte, not Atlanta. And we are the largest faith-friendly publicly traded company. We have a purpose statement. Think about a publicly traded company with a purpose statement to honor God in all we do by serving others, pursuing excellence, and growing profitably. To honor God in all we do by serving others is our purpose statement. And we have 104 plant sites. Our department, Culture and Care department, has a chaplain in every plant. It's basically a chaplain for every 200 employees. We have more recommits and salvations than most churches. And 131 prayer groups. I'm blessed to lead 16 of them myself, prayer groups. It's a ministry within an organization that when we hire employees and they don't know God, it don't take very long to know God. And I'm telling you, the results on our retention rate, higher than most in the beverage industry, if you look at our growth and revenues and profits, I mean, God so blesses our business to the point our chairman and CEO, Frank Harrison, often quotes, generosity drives cash flow. The more you give your time, treasure, and talent, the more God blesses your business. And we're on the NASDAQ under the ticker Coke, C-O-K-E, and God has so blessed our business. So I'm at a faith-based company, and the interesting thing is the Coke system, Coca-Cola and Coca Consolidated, were the largest victim of the ADM case for corn syrup. So when ADM paid hundreds of millions of dollars back to clients, they paid $400 million to the Coke system, which was the largest fine they paid back in the class action suit. I'm vice president of a company that was my biggest victim 35 years ago. Only God could do that.
The irony and craziness of that is just unbelievable.
Yes. Married, survived, working for a victim. My wife, we paid almost everything we had in $9 million of fines, several $1 million of legal fees. And the companies that were the victims, when they won these class action suits, they gave my wife a whistleblower award my first year in prison and financed my family 8 years when I was in prison. The victims of me financed my family for 8 years.
Wow.
Miracle of God.
Seriously, it's almost unbelievable.
Yes.
This month, I was emailing back and forth with Frank, and I'm curious, with what you guys have going on at Coke, it's just unbelievable. What's the culture of servant leadership look like throughout the organization from top down?
Oh, it's unbelievable. And it starts from Frank. It starts for sure with Frank, our chairman and CEO. This is a mission he's had for the last almost 24 years in the company. And that's when he started with chaplaincy in one plant. And it did so well in one Nashville plant. Now we have a chaplain in every plant. Prayer groups, Bible studies. We have a discipleship program. And I tell you, when you work at Coke, a good example, when COVID hit, our employees were the bottles and cans. So people working overtime, I mean, people at home, they drank more because we have Fairlife milk and Monster Energy and Gold Peak tea. And, you know, it's 300 beverages. It's not just Coke, Diet Coke, and Sprite. It's 300 beverages. So people home more, they drank more. But their spouses, a lot of them lost their job when COVID hit in 2020. We put a benevolence fund together, really with Frank. Benevolence fund that helped meet all their financial needs of almost hundreds of families for almost a year, some of them. Covering their family to pay their mortgages, to be able to pay their car payments and their kids' college. And then a more recent one, that would have been during COVID, is when in Asheville, North Carolina, when the hurricane just hit recently, Hurricane L.E.A.D, just the last couple months it hit. Asheville, Western North Carolina was hit. We have a plant there. Over 300 teammates got impacted. Over 20 of them, their homes pretty severely impacted. Within hours, our rapid response team, as part of our culture and care department, is there, which is like a rapid response team of Samaritan's Purse. And they're getting trees off roofs and rebuilding the rooms that the trees damaged and getting those people back in their homes as soon as they can at no cost to those employees. That's the cult. When you love on your people, no matter what their faith is or no faith, and you just take care of your employees at a different level than what corporate America does, I tell you, it's good for business. You do it for God. To honor God in all we do by serving others, but it's good for business.
So you mentioned something before. I think you called it T factor.
Yes.
Explain T factor, because I think it's part of everything that you're talking about is under T factor. But what is T factor?
Yeah, T factor is actually one spoke of the wheel of the culture and care department. So we have prayer groups, Bible studies, chaplains, rapid response team. Then T factor is another one of those initiatives as part of that. And that's where we share with other business. That's transformation factor, because the target is to transform workplace cultures around the world for good, for God, and for growth. And T factor is what we just shared here, what we do within the company. It's kind of the outward expression of what we're doing internally, where other Christian leaders will get more bold and do some of these things that we're talking about, like chaplaincy and prayer groups, and take care of your employees when they're going through some financial challenges, take care of their houses and help do things when fire, hurricanes, or tornadoes happen. That when you take care of your employees are going to they're going to see this is a company they want to stay at long term.
So as people are listening to this, there's going to be thousands of people who are leading at every type of level, leading big organizations, leading small organizations, leading within a company, just leading their family, whatever it is. There's all kinds of servant leaders trying to grow by listening to this. When you think through what T Factor is trying to tell the market, if you will, what do you think people should be hearing themselves?
For one, I think they should attend. It used to be 4 in-person events a year and 4 virtual T Factor. Now we just launched in the last few weeks on demand, where they could watch it at their own convenience. Instead of having to show up in person at a 4-hour event, a half-day event, or even sign up for a 4-hour event in a virtual event. Now we have it on demand, 3 different languages, soon to be 5 languages. They can watch it on there. We've had 79 countries attend T Factor so far, almost 5,000 attendees just this year alone. And we're really estimating about 10,000 next year now that we have the on demand. It has really increased the number of attendees. And when you serve your people, when you care for your people and have a different listening skill, and we talk about that at T Factor, what we call L.E.A.D.S, which is L for listen, E for empathy. Have empathy for employees, really care about them and their families. A for an advocate, be your employee's biggest advocate. D for develop, help your employees develop even more than you do yourself. S for self-reflection and prayer, what you did differently during the week that you wish you would do differently, and do it differently on Monday. The self-reflection, listen, empathy, advocate, develop, self-reflection. When you take care of your employees and listen to a different level and you value them, I can't tell you the difference that makes. And we see it in our retention rates, in our employee engagement, in our surveys that we do. We see it.
Wow. I love that. And it's so applicable for anyone who's leading in a company. What about for employees that are in companies where they don't feel like that? They hear that L.E.A.D.S model and they're like, gosh, I'm just in the wrong culture. I don't get any of that. What encouragement do you give them, or direction do you give people like that?
Well, we talk about that at T Factor too. We do get a lot of senior leaders, a lot of CEOs and COOs and senior VP levels attending T Factor, but we get a lot of middle management too. About a third of our audience is middle management level. And we think no matter what your role is, no matter what your company, let's say you're a large, some of these companies like Amazon have a couple million, 2.3 million employees. We think no matter where you work, and let's say it's a secular company, not a faith-based company, you can still be the salt and light in that company and make an impact in that organization, no matter what level you're at, and no matter if the company is a faith-based company or not. You can be the salt and light, and that will make a difference. And that will impact someone else, and then they will want to do that way. Then they will impact someone else, and it just exponentially, like Intel came to T Factor, and they had several what they call a Christian ERG, a Christian Employee Resource Group. They have several employee resource group, Muslim, Hindu, LGBT, atheist. Most of them, a dozen or 2 dozen people, employees at Intel in these employee resource group, about 20 different ones. They now have 8,000 in their Christian employee resource group. Wow. That's how much it's grown in the last 3 or 4 years. You have 8,000 employees in a 100,000 employee company. That makes an impact on that company, a huge impact. When they're living out some of the things we share on T Factor, 8,000 employees, the impact is tremendous it has on that organization.
I think one of the coolest things that I have noticed just from afar is that at first, when people hear about T Factor, they might think, why aren't you just focused on Coca-Cola bottling? Why aren't you just do the business better and focus on yourselves and don't care? But the interesting thing that I've noticed just from afar is that as you guys have focused on making many workplaces better, building into people even outside of Coca-Cola bottling. It's helped Coca-Cola bottling exponentially grow and helped you really become the authority and one of the leaders in how do you build great workplaces. It's so fascinating to see.
Yeah, this was the vision too. You know, the vision to be a faith-friendly company 23 years ago was Frank Harrison, our chairman and CEO. Our department, Culture and Care, reports to our chairman's department. We're kind of executing his vision and implementing his vision in the company. And then T-Factor was his vision 9 years ago, 2015, to show how this works and the impact on our culture where other companies could be bold and do these moves. And I tell you, we've had over 10,000 attendees total, over 5,000 just this year alone. And we predict, like I said, 10,000 attendees for next year. Now with this new on-demand, just to give you a flavor of the new on-demand, it's over 2,000 attendees in the last 6 weeks. Because people can watch their own convenience in their own language. And that makes a huge difference and a very high quality. They will feel that they're at an in-person event with the quality of this event on demand.
Wow. Well, Mark, I want to hit you with 10 rapid fire questions.
Yes.
Where you just say the first thing that comes to your mind and there's no wrong answer.
Okay.
Who's the first person you think of when I say servant leadership?
I'd say two. I'd say Frank Harrison's the first person that I think of, and Chuck Colson is the person right up that same level too, when I think of servant leadership.
Love it. What's the 5 words that most describe yourself?
I'd say servant leader. I know that's 2 words. Compared to my 30s, humility, much more humility. It was all pride in my 30s when I was involved in this ADM price fixing case. I think humility compared to, my wife would say, married to me for 45 years, my humility is a lot different than it was 35 years ago when pride probably dominated my life. So I think, and listen and empathetic. Servant leader, humility, listen better, and empathetic. Much different than I was 35 years ago.
Those are all great words. What's your favorite author or book?
One of my probably the most recent my favorite book is the Bible, by far. And I try to read in the Bible in my quiet time each and every morning. But probably my most recent favorite book is Ken Boa, Life in the Presence of God by Ken Boa. It's a wonderful book about how you bring your faith, not just on the weekends, but how you Colossians 3:23, how every minute of your life to serve God with your whole heart like you're working for the Lord and not for man. I believe living in the presence of God, Ken Boa, has helped me improve that. So it's one of my most favorite recent books.
And Ken has a crazy story for those that haven't read his stuff.
Yes.
What about favorite movie?
Favorite movie I love, if you count the series, you count The Chosen, like the series.
Sure.
I love The Chosen. We're ready for the next season. But that'd be my favorite show, The Chosen.
Favorite food?
Favorite food, Chinese. Love Chinese food.
Favorite thing to do in your free time?
Hiking. My wife and I, each and every year for 7 years in a row, went to Teton Mountains and hiked. From sunup to sundown for a week in the Teton and Yellowstone National Park, kind of Wyoming, Montana area. And this year we did 7 years in a row of that. This was the first year we didn't do that. We went rafting and hiking in Sedona, Arizona, and rafting down Grand Canyon.
Wow. Surprising fact about you.
I speak fluent German, lived in Germany for 4 years and speak fluent German. And I lived in Germany because I speak fluent German and the company moved me over there for 4 years. Our youngest son was born there.
Wow, sehr gut. Favorite place you've been?
Favorite place I've been? Israel would have been the favorite place that I've been. 2016, we walked where Jesus walked and baptized in the Jordan. And Israel would be my favorite place that I've been. Brought scripture alive.
Where's somewhere you want to visit that you have never been before?
I've been to a lot of countries. Singapore would be another one of my favorites just because of the safety and the cleanliness of it. Stopped at Dubai for a couple layovers when I lived in Frankfurt, Germany. Not much time there, but I'd be interested to see more of Dubai because I've only been the airport in a layover.
And finally, what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Best advice that I've ever gotten would be 27, 28 years ago. Chuck Colson discipled me starting March of 1998 and said, "Show me your mentor, I'll show you your future." And it changed my life by listening to him. If I didn't listen to him, it wouldn't change my life at all. But it changed my life, and I've had good mentors ever since.
Wow. Well, I'm so thankful, Mark, for your willingness to be on the podcast and to share really the true story of the informant and what life looks like after that, which is just amazing.
Maybe the rest of the story, right? The informant kind of ends when I went to prison, but there's a lot happened in those 30 years since then. So maybe what we talked about is the rest of the story.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Servant Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Be sure to check out the servantleadershippodcast.org for more updates and additional bonus content.